Welcome back to Behind the Caution Tape. I am your host, CrashLit. We got a busy week coming up and also a lot of stuff happening last week, so let's get into all of it right here, right now. So before we get into any sports in particular, I did want to mention that despite taking the head coaching job with the Las Vegas Raiders last week, the LA Times did confirm that Pete Carroll will continue teaching his business class in Marshall, BUAD 498, The Game is Life. So just wanted to pass on for anyone wondering, especially considering I've talked to a few people, including a couple of student athletes who have taken it or have sat in on it, and they've said it was a really cool experience. So I thought just definitely wanted to pass on. I'm not personally in it, so I have not heard much about. I've only heard all my stuff is just that I've heard is just secondhand, is from people who are in the class. Last week, Jen Cohen released another State of Troy email to the USC community, and in it she did acknowledge that USC football being 7-6 is not up to the standard. She said, and I quote, "I know that a 7-6 season at USC is not up to the Trojans' standard, and we must work tirelessly and collectively to do better." And that leads me into my next point with regards to more football news. USC has hired Chad Bowden as general manager. He was hired on Friday, and in it, Bowden comes after spending the last 4 years at Notre Dame, including the 2024 season as the general manager. And he helped, and this year especially, his contributions were key as the Irish made it all the way to the national final where they fell to Ohio State. So respectable runner-up finish for the Irish. Hate to say it, but it is true. You got to admit that a very impressive year. So because of that, I think it's a great hire, and I think you can really see that just it shows USC's commitment to just wanting to do things better, especially in this new era with revenue sharing coming up. And especially I think he was drawn to it despite having, going from, one of USC's most bitter rivals in Notre Dame, as well as he's very close with Marcus Freeman. Freeman brought him when Freeman was hired as the defensive coordinator with the Irish by Brian Kelly back in 2021. He brought Bowden with him. So that shows how highly, and I think they're just really close friends too, from what I was seeing in the news. So I think it's a big move that just helps USC, especially just with recruiting and revenue sharing for both current and incoming student athletes, as the pending House versus NCAA settlement is likely to be finalized later this year. On to a bit of news from men's water polo. Max Miller was selected as a finalist for the Peter J. Coutinho Award, which is given to the top college water polo player every year. The winner will be announced on June 7th. Meanwhile, a bit of news out of lacrosse as they get ready for their first game on February 8th. Alexis Niblock was named a team captain, and Niblock and Isabel Vitale were named preseason All-Americans by Lacrosse Magazine. Beach volleyball, meanwhile, even though their season is still yet to start, they had athletes competing this weekend in the Junior Pan Am Beach Trials at Manhattan Beach. And the beach volleyball schedule is now out online. Still no official announcement from the team on social media. But there are some notable things I wanted to talk about, especially with the season coming up soon. There are 4 home duels as part of when USC hosts the Battle for Los Angeles. They'll have Concordia, University Irvine, and Pepperdine at Merle Norman on February 28th, and then the following day they will have Washington and Long Beach State on March 1st. And I think these are just definitely, it's going to be an exciting, interesting year, especially because USC is now in the MPSF. But it does look very similar with 6 of the previous 9 teams in the Pac-12 now competing. So USC is now in it with UCLA, Stanford, Cal, Oregon, Washington, and Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon choosing to join this as well. So I think this is going to be a very competitive league. Note that Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah are joining the Big 12 for beach volleyball, which is now sponsoring beach volleyball this year. The MPSF Championships will be held at Newland Street in Huntington Beach from April 23rd through the 25th. And this year, for the first time, this year the NCAA Championships will be at the Huntington Beach Pier, so not in Gulf Shores. And so definitely going to be an interesting and exciting year for sure. I definitely am trying to definitely plan on going to the national championships, given that they're so close to where I'm from in Newport. But for but USC season starts on February 20th when they go take part in the Outrigger Duke Kahanamoku Beach Classic from February 20th through February 22nd, and their first duel of the year will be against host Hawaii. So definitely excited for them to start soon as well. Meanwhile, men's golf starts their spring season up today, actually. Well, they'll be taking part in the Southwestern Invitational hosted by Pepperdine at Thousand Oaks. That'll run from today through Wednesday. The event will feature 13 opposing schools, including the host Waves. And USC's lineup will be Gavin Arila, Jack George, Jack Buchanan, Antonio Safa, and Jaden Dumdumava. So best of luck to the men's golf team as they resume play today. Women's golf, meanwhile, has their first spring event starting on February 2nd, and that'll run through the 4th in the Therese Hessian Regional Challenge, which will be hosted by Ohio State at Palos Verdes Estates. I'll have more info on that next week. And also, I want to say congratulations to Jasmine Kuhn, Catherine Park for being named as part of the inaugural U.S. National Development Program Elite Amateurs team. Swim and dive, meanwhile, gets ready for their final meets, with the women competing this week against UCLA at Wating Zoo. That'll be on Friday at noon. So they're looking to end their season strong with a senior day dub over the crosstown rival Bruins. So 4's down, and good luck to them. Men's swim and dive will have their final meet the following a week from Friday against UNLV at 1 p.m. So another final stretch for both those teams. Meanwhile, track and field took part in the Raider Invitational hosted by Texas Tech in Lubbock on Friday, and USC athletes won 10 different events based on what I was able to research from looking at the results of the event. Up next for them, they will have a week off before taking part in the New Mexico Collegiate Classic from February 7th through February 8th. I will talk more about that next week. Meanwhile, in some news with tennis, we'll start with the men's team. They took part in the ITA kickoff weekend in Tucson, lost 0-4 to host Arizona on Saturday, then bounced back to beat Oklahoma State on Saturday in the consolation duel 4-0. Up next, they got a busy week coming up with 3 duels coming up. Friday, Saturday against Stanford at 1, and Sunday with 2 duels, Cal at noon and UNLV at 4. So busy weekend for the men's tennis team. Women's tennis hosted ITA kickoff weekend, beat Penn 4-0 on Friday, but fell to Auburn 2-4 in the final on Saturday. So they have a bit of time off now, and they will host San Diego on February 15th at noon. I'll talk more about that when it approaches. Meanwhile, women's water polo is continuing very hot. They're off to a 4-0 start. They are currently held steady at 3rd, and they won both their games at the Lancer Joust. They beat host CBU, Cal Baptist 20-2, and number 7 UCI on Friday. So they're now 4-0 in the year. Against the Lancers, Alma Jacoby led with 5 goals against Lancers, and against the Anteaters, Tilly Kearns led USC with 8 goals. So just really you're seeing kind of the top players really start to emerge from this team, and it's really turning out to be Kearns, who's a veteran player with Olympic experience. As I've talked about before, she is a silver medal. She earned a silver medal with Australia this summer in Paris, so she's obviously just a dominating threat. It is great that USC's got her back, but also 2 young players stepping up in freshman Emily Osmus, who has 14 goals on the year, and then Ava Stryker, sophomore 12. Stryker had an impressive showing last year as a freshman, so I think this is just going to be a very dangerous very dangerous offense when you have Kearns with 16 goals, us with 14, and Stryker with 12. So I think this is going to be a very exciting team to watch this year. So I'm really excited for it. As for what appears to be going on with who's going to be the goalkeeper in the cage, seems like Jada Ward right now is the front runner, but I still don't know enough and haven't seen enough. This is based on what I've seen from the box scores. Obviously, I will talk more about it as I see this team play and who is in the cage more. But Jada Ward right now appears to be the favorite based on time in the box, time based on kind of time in the cage, based on what I read in the box scores. And and the other goalies, Anna Reed, Lauren Schneider, Lane Horgan, and then Ward as well, each played a quarter against CBU, but against UCI, Ward played all 32 minutes, so all 4 quarters. So really excited to see how this season all turns out. And I think that's just both offensively and in the cage. It's just going to be a really complete team, and I'm really excited to get to watch them soon when they make it back home. Up next for the Trojan for women's water polo, they will take part in the Triton Invitational down in La Jolla. So they'll have 4 total games this weekend. They'll have one on Friday, two on Saturday, and one on Sunday. First game has been confirmed. It'll be against Claremont Mud Scripps on Friday at 9:20 a.m. The rest of the games are still to be determined and based likely on the outcomes of how the Trojans do as well as their opponents. On to women's basketball. They had some news before their game last week that the UCLA game has been announced as a sellout. That game set to take place on February 13th is going to be definitely a really exciting game, especially if the rankings hold and both the Trojans and the Bruins stay undefeated, don't lose again. UCLA is currently number 1 in the country. USC's number 4. So it's going to be a great matchup. I'm really excited for this one, and it's just going to be such a great game. So really looking forward to it and just really looking forward to just seeing just 2 top basketball programs clash at Galen Center. The last few times these teams have clashed, they've just been so much fun, especially the last 2 times when USC won at Galen, then won in Vegas. And I think it was double overtime. So just really excited for this crosstown showdown coming up in mid-February. On to the game that the Trojans did play last week. They got a 79-37 win at Purdue. Avery Howell and it was freshman Avery Howell who stepped up and led the Trojans with 18 points. A game that saw Purdue start the first quarter strong. However, USC started to catch up near the end and responded with a 31-0 run to start the second quarter and never looked out. And I was able to watch this game, but I had it playing in my car as I was driving to CSUN last week for men's volleyball, which I will get to in a minute. But pretty much it was just such an exciting game to be a part. It was such an exciting game to listen to, especially just when it was just nonstop bucket after bucket for the Trojans. So USC is now 18-1 on the year. They are 8-0 in Big Ten on a 14-game winning streak too. And only UCLA is still undefeated in Big Ten play. And they held steady at number 4 in this week's AP poll. Up next for the Trojans, they host Minnesota, who is 18-3 overall and 6-3 in Big Ten on Thursday at 7 p.m. That game was available on Peacock for those who can't make it. And then on Sunday they face Iowa, who is 13-7, 3-6 on Sunday at 10:30 a.m. That game is available on Fox. What's notable about this Iowa game is that'll be the game that Iowa retires Caitlin Clark's number 22 jersey. So these are both still going to be good games. And even though the Hawkeyes aren't as good as they were last year due to Clark being gone and coaching change, they're still going to be fired up, especially when Hawkeye fans see Caitlin Clark walk in that building. So 2 really exciting games this week, especially looking forward to that game at Minnesota. And USC just needs to, take care of business and can't afford to have a slow start like they did against the Boilermakers, especially when you're facing a team as good as Minnesota. Sure, they dropped out of the rankings this week, but I think this team is still going to be very good and give the Trojans a fight. And obviously, when you're on the road, especially a team like Iowa, where they're very proud of their women's basketball. You have to be ready to play. So really excited for both these matchups, and I think it's just going to be two good games the Chargers got coming up. I think they can pull out two wins, but this definitely could be pretty gritty at times. So really excited to see this team play again this week and be back home actually for the first time in kind of a while, especially with that Northwestern game being postponed for the time being due to the fires happening in the LA area. Meanwhile, men's basketball also got a big win on last Wednesday when they beat one at Nebraska 78-73. Desmond Claude led all Trojans with 21 points, and it was just back and forth the entire time. I was able to watch it since I was at CSUN and the volleyball match was happening at the same time, but I was following it on my phone, and it was just USC was barely holding on and just back and forth. It looked like a great game, but then USC was able to hold on and pull away a bit and hold on to get the 78-73 win. And I think that's a great, very good win on the road. USC's now 3-1. Like somehow they seem to have embraced this road warrior mentality. And it seems like everyone's saying that, especially people in athletics too, especially the voice of the men's basketball team, Jordan Moore. He was talking about that on the Victory podcast last week. And he was saying that, yeah, they just seem to be playing. Sometimes they seem to be like just playing their best basketball away from Galen. So that's now their second quad one win of the season, especially after getting that win against then number 13 Illinois a few weeks ago. So I think this team's got a lot of potential. And so they're now 12-7 on the year, 4-4 in Big Ten. That still has them in tied ninth in the Big Ten standings. And up next, USC's got two big games this week. They got UCLA, who's 14-6 and 5-4 tonight at 7 p.m. at Galen Center, and then they will host Michigan State at 1:30 p.m. on Saturday. And that game is available on Peacock, the UCLA game on FS1. Michigan State is 7-2 and 8-0 overall and 8-0 in Big Ten play. So two big games coming up. So really just USC's just going to need all hands on deck tonight against UCLA and also MSU too. And just I think for this game, it's going to be really exciting. I'm looking forward to going, and I think it's just going to be a great game. These environments are always great, and I'm really excited to just see how all these guys learn about just the meaning of this rivalry, especially considering only two guys from last year's squad are still here. And we got a couple of and we got, Kobe Johnson coming back for the first time, making his return to Galen with UCLA. Trent Perry as well, even though he never played for USC, but he was committed to USC before Andy Enfield left for SMU and then flipped his commitment to UCLA and Mick Cronin. However, and obviously, here's the thing I'm going to say. I've said this before. I said this last week, and I said it to both Ethan Anderson and Joshua Morgan when I had them on the show over the last couple of weeks. I do not blame Kobe Johnson for going to UCLA. He had to make the decision that was best for him. That said, though, he made a traitorous move, and he needs to be booed anytime his name is called or anytime he touches the ball tonight. So 4's down. Let's go. Fight on. Be there tonight. It's going to be a great game. I think if USC plays like how they've been playing, like when they play like at that high level, they can beat anyone, I think. And that's something I really believe, but they just need to show up and just really show out. And I think it's obviously going to be a great game, as I was saying. So just definitely got to show up for that one and just definitely boo. I mean, Trent Perry a little bit, but especially Kobe Johnson, especially with how just he was going right into the student section last year at UCLA and just going 4's down to them. So I think it's like I said, I don't blame him, but it's still a traitorous move. So he needs to be booed for going to the dark side. As for, I'll briefly talk about the Michigan State game now, since that's coming up on Saturday. I think it's also going to be a great game. You got Michigan State, who's just absolutely just on a tear this year. They've been dominant. And you got a legendary head coach, Tom Izzo, coming to Galen Center. So I think it's just definitely going to be a really, really good game on Saturday. So on Saturday afternoon. So if you can make it to that one, definitely do. I think there's just a bunch of great stuff happening this week. So really excited for all of that. But as I was saying, Crosstown Showdown is tonight. Be there. Got to show them Bruins who runs LA. And we all know who it is. It's a team in the Cardinal and gold. So fours down and fight on. Now we'll talk about men's volleyball, final team on the schedule today. And they got a 3-1 win at number 15 CSUN on Wednesday night. I was there for it. I drove up to Northridge. Brutal traffic, but definitely worth it, especially with how it went. And Dylan Klein led the team with 17 kills, but also Noah Roberts with 15 kills and Parker Tompkinson with 13 also had big, big matches too, and just really helped USC take down the Matadors. And it was a back and forth match for most of it. You saw CSUN win the first set really tightly, 25-23. And we all knew it was going to be a tense match. I talked to a couple of parents, and especially after how last year's match at Galen went, where the Matadors won in 5, you just knew it was going to be a blow for blow game, blow for blow match. But USC rebounded to win the next two, 25-23, 25-22, and then just dominated the fourth set, which they won 25-13. So definitely, I think this team has a lot of potential, and I'm really liking how they're playing, especially like head coach Jeff Nygaard is not afraid to play his young talent too. And you saw him give the nod to Johnny Dykstra at Libero, who led the team with 14 digs. So really impressive performance from Dykstra. Obviously, he's having Caleb Blanchette lead at setter for a second year, and then you have the veteran leadership of Dylan Klein, who's been starting since his freshman year. So, and then obviously Guy Guinness, who's won 2 national championships with UCLA, someone who actually came to the right side. But just obviously, USC's now 5-0 on the year. Last reported poll, they were at number 6. We'll see how they do this week when the polls come out later today. And up next, USC has 3 matches this week. They'll play at Central State for a rematch of last year's game when the Central State came to USC. Central State is 3-0-3 on the year. That game will be Wednesday at 2 p.m. in Wilberforce and doesn't appear to have TV for it. But then USC will take part in the Big Ten Challenge in Columbus, where they'll face Ohio State, who is 3-3 on the year, on Friday at 4 p.m., and then Penn State, who is 0-4 on Saturday at 1 p.m. Both those games will be available on Big Ten Plus. So definitely, if you have the subscription, definitely make sure to watch that game. USC's going to need to obviously keep playing high level. Sure, Ohio State and Penn State haven't started the seasons as strong as they have in past years, but that still means these are going to be 2 tough games, and obviously they can't, get caught looking ahead with Central State on Wednesday. So I think these are just 2 big games for the Trojans, and I really think that USC can win all 3 matches in the Buckeye State this week, but they just got to, obviously first take care of business against Central State, and then, focus on the Big Ten Challenge with, 2 teams that I still think are very good, but I think this team has a lot of potential, and I think they are really well positioned. So, and I'm definitely interested to see what Nygaard does with the lineup. So that'll also be something interesting to follow this week. So last week I just went 1-0, which is the men's volleyball win at CSUN. So that puts me at 51-14 on this school year and 263-96 all time. So I'm now 5-0 at men's volleyball, 9-4 at men's basketball, 9-1 at women's basketball. And my plans for this week are men's basketball versus UCLA tonight. Everyone better be there. You better be there. Like, everyone pull up. I know I've been hyping it up. I was hyping up a few minutes ago, but I'm going to keep saying it. Everybody be there. And then women's basketball on Thursday against Minnesota. I'm going to go to the women's swim and dive meet against UCLA on Friday. And then men's basketball against Michigan State on Saturday. Those are my plans for sure. And depending on how things go up, I may pull up to some of the tennis matches, but tennis duels. So we will just see how it all plays out. But that is all for us today. Thank you again for joining Behind the Caution Tape. I hope you've been enjoying the new kind of content I've been putting out, which is, the guest interviews. Obviously, it's been super fun. Have 4 guests I've had so far, and 3 of them pretty recently with Simone Jackson, Joshua Morgan, Ethan Anderson, and obviously Behind the Caution Tape's first ever guest in Nick Lopez last month. But overall, it's just been really exciting. It's just been a fun time. Obviously, having guests on. I'm definitely going to look into having more guests on too. Nothing is scheduled for now. So as of now, you'll next see me Monday. But if anything changes, I will definitely make sure to announce it on my social media. Make sure to follow me everywhere at CrashLit. And definitely check out my website, CrashLit.com, to see everything that I'm up to with my reporting stuff. So that is all for us today. Be at that UCLA game tonight. Be there or be square. Fight on, fours down. Let's go. So thank you again for joining us. We'll see y'all next week for the Monday rundown, and fight on.